Hey, how's it going, everybody? I am Indie Pride from Milk and Cookies Total War, bringing you another Call of Warhammer Beginning of the End Times multiplayer battle. This time, I am playing as the Tomb Kings of ancient Nehekhara, and my opponent, X-Viper, will be playing as the Azrai, the Wood Elves of Athel, Loren. As my core, the most important troops I've brought to the field today are the Ushabti, carved into the likenesses of the gods and goddesses of ancient Nehekhara. They are the guardian statues of the long silent pyramids of the Tomb Kings. As my front line, I brought a bunch of slaves, just crappy skeletons that are going to go forward and die. And they're undead already, so I'm not too worried about them dying. And then my second line made up of skeleton warriors. Third line made up of mummies. And back here, look at how badass these guys look. The Tomb Guard, the partially mummified remains of Cetra's elite guard, still retaining their masterful skill in combat, even in undeath. Look at those nasty looking axes, the scythes they're carrying. In the back here, more Ushabti. I believe I have 3 of those. And out on the flanks, I have Tomb King's Chariots, which are going to be very useful for running down all of those annoying skirmishers for the Wood Elves. And I also have some Tomb Scorpions. We'll see how these guys do. They should be very powerful. They look very scary when you look at this model. It's pretty awesome what the mod creators have been able to do to add these guys into Warhammer. We'll see what kind of impact they can make on the battle. And across the way, we have the Glade Riders of Athel, Loren. These will be the skirmishers. Incredibly fast cavalry. Good charge, but very squishy, which characterizes the Wood Elves in general. Very good skirmishers. Very fast, very hard-hitting, but they will crumble in sustained melee. Back here, we have the Wild Riders, which were buffed substantially. In the last version of Call of Warhammer, they only had 22 models, so they were pretty trash. They've been buffed up to have 37 models now, so almost twice as many men in a unit makes them much more viable, and I always loved their model, so it was a shame that I wasn't able to bring them before, but now Wood Elves are one of my favorite factions on this mod because Wild Riders are pretty viable at this point, and they're not very expensive either. We've got the Treekin. These are the forest spirits that have just been twisted in the deep heart of Athel, Loren, and up front, bunch of Eternal Guard and Waywatchers in the back. Very long range, decent melee stats, but one of the best archer units in the game. 10 missile damage, so they can absolutely shred stuff from long range. Bunch of Glade Guard to back them up, and Wildwood Rangers with their great weapons on the flanks, and some more Treekin and Glade Riders out on this flank. And look at the models, actually, on these Glade Riders. You can kind of see the tattoos on their horses. Very, very cool looking stuff. And the Wood Elves, the Azrai of Athel, Loren, are filling the skies with arrows, blocking out the sun. And my job is going to be to close in the melee with them as quickly as possible, or I'm going to get absolutely shredded. So Tomb Kings, very much a rush-centric army, and I've got a bunch of meat shields and slaves up front to absorb a lot of that fire. You can see how many have already dropped so far, losing lots of guys, but I'm not worried about that with my Ushabti yet. Skirmish fire, not going to do very well against them. And one thing about Tomb King's Chariots, they're very good against cavalry as well, and they are fast. They're going to close in and hopefully just shred through these Glade Riders. Think of them as sized chariots. They don't actually have the size on the side of their wheels, but they function the exact same way. And when you pull them through enemy cavalry, they can do quite a bit of damage. Over on this flank, more Tomb King's Chariots going forward, ripping through some of these Wild Riders up front. And then I'm going to close in with my Ushabti to back them up. Just trying to clear them off the field as soon as I possibly can. Get rid of the mobility for the Azrai. If I can do that and win the melee engagement, I should be able to win this battle relatively easily. So slaves up front, just going to tie down these Eternal Guard, do what kind of damage they can. Backed up by the mummies, that should go relatively well. Ushabti in the mix as well. There are some War Dancers on the field. War Dancers in the back. I'll be sure to catch some of their animations. Lots of backflips, lots of spinning, lots of cool stuff they do. So I'll try to catch that. Wild Riders slamming into my left flank. Tomb Guard are going to overlap and charge in. And in sustained melee here, Tomb Guard should definitely win this engagement. Wild Riders will have to pull out in cycle charge for them to be very effective. Kind of a blob going on over here. Ushabti with those massive great weapons just scything through these Wild Riders, cutting through them very quickly. But Glade Riders in a pretty threatening position. And you could skirmish with them, or you could just send them straight into my back lines and start charging stuff, which is why I brought these Chariots back here, trying to get these Glade Riders, get the mobility off the field for the Wood Elves, because as soon as that happens, I can close in and scythe through all of these skirmishers in the back. These Chariots have taken some losses, but they are chasing off a bunch of his Glade Guard. which is exactly what I want. Make sure that they don't skirmish me down. And then over here, my Tomb Scorpion have made it into melee with the War Dancers. And only one model. This model is actually kind of isolated. The other Tomb Scorpion's a little bit further away, so I'm going to pull them out, try to cycle charge. I'm really not sure what the best way to use these guys is. We'll see how effective they'll be utilized in this game. War Dancers are going to close in with the Skeleton Warriors. You can see those backflip animations. It's really cool stuff. That's kind of what I want to see in Total War Warhammer. Obviously a little bit better animation because this is a decade-old game, but the spin kicks and everything is exactly how I pictured them when I read the army book. So, very cool looking unit. In the center, pretty even all the way across the line. I didn't really flank very much, which is definitely a mistake. I did manage to slam these Skeleton Warriors into the back of his Wildwood Rangers, and I'm destroying them, destroying the Azrai left flank, which is very nice. But I haven't done too much flanking over on this side, which is a mistake. Tomb Scorpion's going to go down to a hail of arrow fire. That's bad. This is a 4,000 gold unit, and I don't think they were able to do very much. Over on this side of the battlefield, Treekin probably going to beat the mummies, I think, in prolonged melee, but that'll go relatively evenly. They are backed up by a few remnants of the Ushabti. With the Glade Riders shooting in, though, I think this engagement will go the Azrai way. And then in the back, I have this Chariot just chasing everything down on the red line. The Waywatchers are fast, man. They have a ton of mobility, really fast movement speed, and he's just going to kind of keep my Tomb King's Chariot tied up. But at the same time, this is only one Chariot, and I'm tying up an entire Waywatcher unit. So that's probably a good trade for me, honestly. In the center, Ushabti are trying their best to cut through these War Dancers. Problem is, War Dancers have very fast attack animations. So, and actually, there are some Dryads on the field as well. Those are the lower tier branch race, basically. They're the very malevolent forest spirits from the Wildwood. They're a very good infantry unit. They're very tanky, 2 HP, can last in melee for quite a while. But the War Dancers and some of these faster attacking units are going to do a really good job of stun locking my Ushabti. So Ushabti have the great weapons, and they're a very good unit. Just devastating charge, very good melee attack, defense values, and hit points. The problem, I think they have 5 hit points. The problem is they're engaging War Dancers who have very fast spinning attack animations, and you can see they're actually cutting through my Ushabti. Managed to get a rear charge off, and there are a lot more dead Ushabti in the back lines here than there are War Dancers. So they're kind of surrounding me, and this is a problem with Medieval 2 in general. Is not necessarily a problem, but when you've got really fast attacking animation guys, they'll still wreck higher tier units if they have great weapons or the slower attack animation. So Ushabti getting shredded right now, and they are not going to break, of course, because none of my Tomb King's units are breakable. They will all fight to the last man, but they are getting ripped apart. So I'm going to say, hell no, I'm done with that engagement, pull them out, and go for a different target. Unfortunately, over here it's more War Dancers, and these guys, again, are going to give my Ushabti a lot of fits. So I should be able to kill these remnants right here, but he has a lot more in the back lines. He has cavalry as well. So I'm definitely winning my right flank. I've just completely overwhelmed him here, but I'm also blobbed up. Didn't do the best job surrounding them, and so I kind of made this engagement take longer than it should have. Battle's really even right now. We both lost about 2/3 of our armies. Another devastating charge coming in from the Ushabti from the rear. And I think I'm going to win the melee engagement, which is important, obviously. But now in the late game, a lot of the elite Azrai troops are still alive. Going to kill the Wood Elf General. Wood Elves have some morale issues if their gen dies, so that could be a deciding factor. We'll see. But he has cavalry in the late game, which can be devastating, as you guys know, in any Total War game, but especially Medieval 2, Shogun 2 specifically. Having cav in the late game, being able to charge isolated targets, very, very big deal. So these Ushabti, not going to do well against cavalry when they're getting charged, and my infantry definitely won't. So, do have these Tomb King Chariots, only one model left in those guys. Ushabti did manage to tie down some of these Glade Riders. Trying to sight through as many as I can before they run away. Need to make sure I kill a bunch of them. Hopefully get them to rout and shatter. That's the biggest deal. If I can get them to shatter, they won't come back. But even 10 more guys, like all these guys will probably come back. And 10 Glade Riders can kill an entire Ushabti unit if they're cycle charging appropriately. So maybe not a full strength one, but certainly the remnants that I have. Breaking through. Chasing off a lot of these War Dancers. Glade Riders, I do expect those guys to rally. Waywatchers still in the back. Glade Guard still in the back. Shooting in. Doing some damage. And we have the Glade Riders over here in Cantabrian Circle. which of course they don't have in Warhammer lore or tabletop, but who cares? It looks awesome. So lots of skirmishing going on here, and this is where things get a little bit wonky because I don't have a ton of mobility. The Ushabti are my fastest troops. My regular infantry cannot catch up to the Waywatchers or the War Dancers, Glade Guard, any of those troops. Look at that spin kick, that's so awesome. But I can't really catch up to a lot of his skirmishers unless my Ushabti are still alive, so I need to make sure that they don't die. If they die, I'm going to be in for a world of hurt, basically be at the whim of X-Viper, who could just kite me forever and skirmish me down. X-Viper is a mod creator, or one of the mod developers on the team. He's doing a lot of the balancing for this newest version of Beginning of the End Times, so definitely show him some love. He's been doing a lot of great work for the mod. But right now, battle's still pretty even. 86% of my army's dead. 81% of his army is dead. Mummies doing work against these War Dancers. I do expect to win this engagement. But looking at the rest of my army, there is not a whole lot left. I did manage to rout the remnants of these War Dancers. I don't expect them to come back. Only 5 men left in that unit. But Treekin charging in now. And Glade Riders charging in from the back. Don't have to worry about morale penalties, but I do have to worry about those punishing charges with these devastating Azrai spears. And as he cycle charges with a Treekin as an anvil, that's going to be bad news for these skeleton warriors. I do have a lot of troops left over here, so I think I'm going to win this engagement too. Only a handful of Treekin left, but more are coming in from the rear. Don't want to get hammer and anvil by Treekin. They've got 7 hit points. They cost 5,000 gold. They are very, very good units. And this is starting to look a little bit more of a wash back here. And it's very spread out at this point, as you would expect. Wood Elves very dependent on kiting and just getting the hell away. You do not want to be fighting in sustained melee if you can avoid it as the Wood Elves. And so at this point, Viper has spread the field and made it difficult for me to close him down. Waywatchers all the way against the red line. Still have the Glade Riders in Cantabrian Circle, which there's no reason for him to be in it at this point. He's just making his guys exhausted and making them have an accuracy penalty. I don't have any skirmish units, so I'm not shooting back. That's the only reason you want to be using Cantabrian Circle. So maybe he's just doing that to look cool, but there's really no purpose that I can think of. Now the Ushabti are charging in. Good charge into the Waywatchers, but they can defend themselves pretty well in melee. They are considered the best tabletop unit for the Wood Elves in 8th edition, and their stats definitely reflect that. I think they have like 9 attack, 12 defense. That's really good for an archer unit. Great morale too. My general is going to go down. That is not Cetra. Might be one of the other Hierophants or something in the Tomb King army. But he is going to go down, and these Ushabti are going to get surrounded, isolated, and destroyed. And this was a mistake. I should not have sent my Ushabti this far out to get isolated. And now he's going to be able to surround them and just cut them to pieces. Look at those banners. That's gorgeous looking. Wood Elves banner is not finished yet, as you can see. I think that's a Norskin banner. But the Tomb Kings have... Oh, look at that. It looks so good. But this last Ushabti is going to get cut to pieces by the powerful Azrai over here. And now I'm getting my mummies charged in the back. And all these punishing cavalry charges from the Glade Riders. Going to be very devastating. Getting close range volleys into the back of my mummies. Bit of friendly fire there as well, but probably worth it at this point. Mummy's getting shredded from behind, and I have almost nothing left. You can see the poor raggedy-ass remnants of my Tomb King's army making their way across the desert at this point. 4 mummies, 22 mummies, 23 skeleton warriors. That's about it. These guys are going to be dead, and at this point I am at Viper's mercy. I did manage to kill all of the Glade Riders in this unit except for 1. Might even be able to finish off the unit. And actually, it looks like the slaves can rout, which is interesting. But I think that's the only Tomb King's unit that can rout, if I'm not mistaken. Mummies will not. They'll fight to the death. They'll do what they can, but against this many Glade Guard, that is not going to work. And this guy's going to get smacked in the face. Good night, sweet prince. And now he has 14 Glade Riders over here, still skirmishing me down, and he has enough ammo to finish the job. And with these repeated cycle charges, again, another devastating charge coming in. Goodbye, skeleton warriors. Entire unit is dead, basically. And at this point, I'm going to finish off that last Glade Rider unit. It's irrelevant at this point. He can kite me to death. Waywatchers still shooting in, still doing a bit of damage. Entire, almost full strength Glade Guard unit as well. And with these last cycle charges coming in from the back, this will be your game. And the Azrai of Athel Loren will take it. So very well played from the Wood Elves. They're not an easy faction to use in this game whatsoever. Their skirmishers are a bit slow firing, which is kind of surprising. But I think if they buff them up to like high elf status of fire rate, like the Lothern Sea Guard and the high elf archers have, then they'd probably be, I don't know about broken, but they'd be really, really strong. And that, I'm not even sure if they have a faster or slower fire rate than the high elves. It just seems that way. But they're able to fill the sky with so many arrows, and you bring so many Glade Guard because they're so cheap. Only cost you 1,100 gold. You can just bring 6 or 7 units of them. 2 or 3 Waywatchers, you've got 10 archer units. And you can imagine that kind of havoc they can unleash from long range. And their cav units have been buffed, like I said, pretty tremendously. So Wood Elves have become a much better faction than they were in the previous patch. And there's actually an interesting thing I'm going to tell you guys, or I want to tell you. They are taking the army book stats from 8th edition and basically transporting them into a PDF. And like, I don't know what kind of formula they're using, but they're going to transport basically all the tabletop stats into Call of Warhammer Beginning of the End Times in some future patch. I don't think it's going to be the next one. I think it might be a patch after that. But they're basically going to rebalance the entire game, which is pretty cool, and I'm excited to see that. I don't think that Beginning of the End Times is imbalanced per se. I mean, there's so much overpowered stuff in this mod that it's almost like everything's overpowered, and when everything's overpowered, nothing's overpowered, right? But I'm excited to see that brought to life. Of course, 8th edition and tabletop in general has never been the most balanced thing, but it will be a nice fresh look, and there have been a lot of under-the-hood changes that are coming in this next update that are going to be really cool. This is a different version than the one a lot of you guys have. This is not 1.1. This just has the core troops selection. So I haven't talked too much about that, but there was a new addition to Call of Warhammer Beginning of the End Times where they're making it so that you can't bring all of those ridiculous mercenary units with all the factions, and it's basically forcing you to focus on the army book units for that faction. So instead of having a Greenskins army that's made up of a bunch of like Rugloods, Armored Orcs, and like Dogs of War mercenaries, and Mighty Throgs, Hobgoblin Despoilers, those kind of units that have like 2 HP and are kind of broken as a core, they're making it so that you actually have to bring army book units like Orc Boys and Orc Big Guns and Black Orcs and that kind of thing. So that's a nice balance change. You can still change that. It's only one option. The core troops option will be the default option, and there will be others that allow you to pick mercenaries and stuff, but that'll be replacing the time periods that you have in Vanilla Medieval 2, like where you can go high or late period. Instead, you're going core troops or mercenary availability and that stuff. So a lot of cool stuff coming in this version. The one that I'm playing right now doesn't have any new units, but it does have some of the rebalancing, like getting more Wild Riders in a unit, that kind of thing, which is very nice. And it has a bunch of under-the-hood changes that have changed combat. I won't go into detail with that here, but looking at the stats, we've got 103 kills in my Ushabti. A lot of them did decently, around 100 kills. But for a 5,000 gold unit, maybe not super impressive. I think they got stunlocked by the War Dancers, which seemed to be a very good counter to them with their fast attack animations. The Tomb King Chariots did very well. I think I utilized them very well. They're a bit squishy, but they're very good against cav and skirmishers, and that's how I use them. Some of them died, but managed to get quite a bit of kills, 126 and 92. Mummies did alright. I think I could have done a much better job flanking my opponent in the melee battle. I think I got a little bit too blobbed up there. Did manage to get some rear charges off, but they weren't decisive rather. And I was punished with the withering skirmish fire and late game cav charges of the Azrai. So good game to X Viper. Played a bunch of games with him. Probably going to be sharing some more of those. And I've also gotten some very nice 2v2s as well. So definitely keep your eyes out on those. Lots of good replays from Beginning of the End Times coming soon. And of course, we'll still be working in Total War Warhammer and other Total War games as well. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll be bringing you some more content very soon. I forgot to mention it during that replay, but this is pretty important, and actually the entire battle pretty much hinged on the difference in my choices here. So I brought the Tomb Scorpions because they look awesome, like they have an amazing model, but there are 2 units in the Tomb Kings roster that are super comparable in terms of price. It is the Bone Giants and the Tomb Scorpions. And when you look at the stats, you're like, hell, there's not much difference here. It's kind of, doesn't really matter which unit I bring. Yes, it does. Tomb Scorpions are awful. I had forgotten they were awful. They were awful, like, when I was playing 1.6. I think they were in there. They've been bad for a while. They just have weird attack animations that don't do anything. They just kind of sit around in combat and die. They have 12 hit points, but it doesn't feel like that. You saw how fast they died in that game. They were in combat for, like, 45 seconds. Then they took, like, a couple volleys from a skirmish unit, and then they died. So they're really bad. They got 4 kills for 4,000 gold. That's terrible. Bone Giants, on the other hand, have a ton of mobility. They have less hit points, but for some reason are way tankier, and they have an AoE attack that they use very quickly. So if you're playing Tomb Kings, skip the Tomb Scorpion, go for the Bone Giant. Bone Giant may or may not have won me that battle. It was a close battle, so I think if I had gotten more out of my 4,000 gold there, it might have turned it in my favor. But either way, Tomb Scorpion, 4 kills, super underperforming, wasn't used terribly. I charged them into the flank. They just kind of crumbled and died. So, just a PSA, a nice friendly public service announcement from your neighborhood Indie Pride. Bring Bone Giants, don't bring Tomb Scorpions. Thanks for watching. See you guys later.